Hello, my name is Katie Morse, and this is my final for Introduction to Game Programming. This is an expansion of my UAT Brothers project, which I renamed to Gnome Brothers. And this is the gameplay. This is your main menu. When you hit controls, it shows you all the controls that are involved in this game. And when you hit quit, it'll quit the game. And when you press play, it loads your first scene. So when you go up to this character and you press the down arrow, she will spawn a dialogue, which is, so basically the story is, you're a gnome that happened upon an elf, and the elf needs help. A dragon came by and took all our gems, and you were to follow all the gems and defeat the dragon in the end. You can see that our gem UI works. Also, our dev zone works. If you drop down, it will kill your player, and it will restart the level. Also, you have spikes, which do damage as well, so if I go over one, it will take 1 health. Also, when you go to the tree, it acts like a door. If you press the C button, it'll load the next level. This gnome also has dialogue, which basically telling you to watch out for the mini-cars. Mini-cars, which is our enemy. It basically has the same script as the spikes. It does 2 damage, as you can see, and they can kill you. Also, I do have moving platforms in this level, which go from position 1 to position 2, and the character does have to balance on it. And then again, we'll go to the door, and a continuing adventure. And this is the 3rd scene. And this gnome, you can also do a dialogue with her. She'll tell you there's a storm coming, which is foreshadowing the next level. And then we'll go through our 4th scene. So this is the 4th level in our game. So what happens is this gnome will tell you that in the next scene or next level you'll be facing the dragon. I thought it would be unique to have kind of like a storm happening. With the lightning, it kind of acts as like the spikes. It will do damage to the players when you interact with the cloud or get close to them. I thought it would be even more challenging trying to figure out which one is actually going to do damage and which one's not. I thought it would just be fun. Also, these walls are slippery. I have the physics to my character, so it's hard for my character to get up. And then you can see that cloud does do damage. And then you collect the gems. And then this also level has blooming platforms. Low. Also at the beginning of the level you also notice that the lightning clouds, they make a noise. Oops, flew too high. And then when you press C, with Continuing Adventure, which you have the boss battle, and you'll hit the back swoop, you'll hit the... So when you are in the boss battle, so what will happen, you'll hit the dragon until it dies. And then it'll play a death animation when it dies. So what I had with the player, it did 2 hits to kill the dragon. If you were to set it lower, which I will eventually do, the dragon will play through multiple stages. So stage 1 is its beginning stage when it's full of health. Stage 2, it'll become more rapid, it'll also distract the player faster, and then stage 3, or the death scene, it'll play heavily, and the dragon is dead. And then this will load on to my credits. These are all the art assets that I used in this game, and this is the website I got it from, and this is basically my build. Now I will be talking you through all the things that I have in this game. So if I go to my project, as you can see, I do have imported assets such as background, the characters, enemies, level assets, and the player. I also have a prefab, which is what I use for each level. I would place it so I wouldn't have to like rescript it, like for example like putting the canvas on the main camera. I also have multiple scenes. I have my main scene, which is this one, then I have my main menu, then I have scene 2, scene 3, scene 4, scene 5, and scene 6. I have my scripts right here as well, and all my sounds. My player has a box glider on it, and it does have a rigid body 2D with an animator. So if I go into my animation and press play, you'll see that the player is walking. And I have multiple animations. I also have animations for her. And I have animations for my dragon as well in my last level. Also with my player, this coincides with scripts. I do have a jump power where you can adjust. I do have a speed and max speed. I also have all these booleans which check when I'm grounded, my double jump, when I can move, wall sliding, wall check, and facing right. It also says my current health, max health, wall checkpoints, animation. Also, if I go to my main menu, you'll see that I have an image on my canvas. Let's see, go to canvas. I have a background which I was able to manipulate. I also have buttons that work. Whenever I press play, I can actually have the button work with me. It also has text. So if I go into my main menu, or my control menu, I thought it was easier if I just added text. So let me make that. Let's see it. So yeah, as you can see, I have text in it instead of like importing an image. And then I also have in most of my scenes, like my main scene, I do have a where'd it go? I do have a audio manager, which I could use the sounds in my project and apply it to. I can control the volume, the pitch, the loops. Like for example, I do have the theme music looping throughout the game. Let's see. I also do have a play clip at point. So when I go up to a gem, it will destroy the object and then play a noise. And then it'll also register in my text in my gem UI. I do have sound. It is imported right here. I have a theme song, a player hit, so whenever the player gets hit, a minotaur for the enemy. I do have a player death whenever you die. I have my lightning, which is played at the beginning. I have my gem, which when you collect, and I also have the boss, of course, the dragon. And that is it of my inspector. Now I'll be talking about the scripts in my game for Gnome Brothers. So starting off, I'm going to be starting with my audio manager. So it has that public class, which is basically the script. And then This is my public, which is sounds, which just starts it before the first frame is updated. When it's awake, it will play the noise. If not, then it will not play the noise. If an object is destroyed, then it will return the noise, which I use for my gems. It prevents the audio manager being deleted between scenes, so if I don't destroy on load for my game object, then each time I load a scene, I don't have to reapply my audio manager constantly. I do have buttons and slides for the audio. If you looked at my inspector, I can adjust the pitch and the volume, and I also can make it loop constantly. This on Void Start, it plays the theme song constantly throughout the game. Also, a cool thing I added: if the song of the name is wrong in my audio manager, it'll let me know by debugging and tell me that it is completely wrong. And then I'm going to move on to my boss script. So these are integers of health. You have your integer of health, damage, also time between damage, so it doesn't like just kill you constantly on one hit. This declares your animation. I do have a health bar, which I actually used a trick. I used a slider, and then I filled it with a red color, which made it work. And then also I do have the boolean of when it's dead, it plays death animation. So this finds the dragon tag and attaches the animation to it. So these are updates throughout the game, or whenever you're trying to kill the boss. If the health is less than 25, it will play stage 2, which is stage 2 of animations, which is just basically a faster dash and a faster fire. If the health is equal to 0, then it will play the death animation. It's also the time between damage, so it gives the player time to plan out when to hit them, and also it gives the player time to like relax for a second instead of the dragon just constantly attacking you to the point where you can't move a lot. This gives a health bar value. So whenever the player is on trigger on the collider, it will deal the player damage. And also, between damage, it will play, whenever the player gets hit, it will play the animation damage. And also, this script right here, it takes damage from the player instead of like the dragon just hitting you and then you not being able to do anything. I am allowing the player the ability to fight back. This is my dialogue holder. This clears the dialogue. Basically, the dialogue holder is the character, so I put that on the character, and you can type in lines that you want and how many lines you want, and it holds it for the character. So when this starts, it finds the dialogue manager at the beginning of the game. And when your character or the player enters the collider, if you press the down arrow key, it will get an input key up, and then it will show the dialog box. And then I'm going to go into my dialog manager, which manages all my dialogue. This creates a text box. There's a boolean to show when the dialogue is active. You have your strings and your integers. So when you start, it will find the player. When you go into the box, it will try to find it, and then when you click down, it will spawn it, which again is input key down arrow. You also have your box, make sure it's set active, and let's see. This shows the dialogue inspector in which you can edit as well. Then I'll go on to my door. So with my door, it is a tree, so when you go up to it, you can load into a new level, which I have right here. These are my integers, which is low level, and my game master, which manages it as well. So when you start, it will find the tag game master, and then when the player enters it, it will look for the player's tag, and then the text will be displayed when the player enters the trigger box, so the player will know, like, press this button to continue on. When you stay in it, it will continue to show it, and it will low level once you press it, and if you exit it, then of course it will not show anything or no text, and it will not work. Then I have my enemy damage, which is my mini minotaurs. So this finds the player. This also finds the player tag, so it can only damage the player. This is the audio for the minotaurs, and then when the player enters it, the enemy will do 2 damage. And then this is a knockback, so when you hit it, it'll send you flying backwards. And then this is my game master, which is my integer for my gems, my text, my gems text, and my input text, and also my void update. It will every time that I hit a gem, it'll add 1 gem to my text. And at the beginning, it starts at 0. Whenever I hit 1, it will just continually add up from there. This is my ground check. This checks when the player is grounded. This calls the player tag when you're on the ground. If the ground check hits the trigger, then it's grounded. So the player is grounded, then it'll show it's true. If the ground check is in trigger, it is true. So if it stays on the trigger, it will say true. But if it's not on it, then it will void false, or whenever you're in the air, it will not say you're ground checked. You also have your my heart display, which is my heart AI. So it's my image, which I use my heart AI. This is the sprite. This is my player that interacts with it. So when it starts, it will find the player. So it will find the player's health and match it up to the image. And then this will represent the current health of the player with the heart sprite. And also too, when you hit a enemy, it will take away that health and show. And then this is my patrol for my minotaur. This I'm able to use in my inspector. I'm able to adjust my speed and distance that I want the minotaur to go. So if I don't want the minotaur to go far, it will keep it like that. It's my boolean to move right, and my transform to ground detection. So this plays the mini minotaur audio. This will create a raycast and ground check, so it can patrol only that area, which is my transform, which is basically it moving back and forth times the speed and the time. This detects the ground so the enemy doesn't walk past it. So what I have is, since I already have box gliders on my platforms, the minotaur will detect the ground, and once it doesn't detect it, it will flip and start walking the other direction. So this is my ground info glider. So if it's not moving right, then it will move left, so it'll be transform and then it will switch. But if it is moving right, then it will count as true and it will move in the right direction. And then I have my platform, which is these are my moving platforms. So throughout the level, you've seen it move back and forth. So this moves the platforms to a certain position and speed. This is my vector 3, which controls my positions. The start is called, let's see, ignore that one. Platform goes into the next position. So basically, it'll start at one position, which I use with gizmos in my inspector. And then when I place another gizmo, it'll go to that certain point. So when this is updated, so when it is in play, if in position 1, then it will go to position 2. If it is in position 2, then it'll go into position 1. So basically, it'll go back and forth. This controls the speed of the platform going between 2 points, because it wouldn't be fun if it was rapidly going between 2 points and you couldn't jump on it. This allows me to draw gizmos in the inspector, so I can control where the platform moves. And then this is my player script. So these are my variables, my floats, which controls my max speed, my jump, power, my speed. My booleans, which is grounded, can double jump, can move, the wall sliding, wall check, and facing right. It's my stats, which is current health, max health. My references, which is rigid body, animator, game master, transform, and layer mask. So when it starts, it gets the rigid body and animator. And then the current health is equal to the max health, and then finds the component of the game master. When the update is called, so during play, it sets the boolean of ground and speed in the animation. If this is the movement from, so if you're not facing right, then you're facing left. If you're facing right, then it's true, and you'll be facing in the vector 3 direction. When you jump, it has a regular jump, which is times your jump power, and then once you jump, you can double jump. But if you don't jump, then you can't double jump at all. This is my current health, and then this says that if my current health is less than 0, then I'll die. This checks if I'm grounded. It makes the player slide on the wall if he's not. So if my player does not appear to be grounded, and when it hits that wall with a which has a layer thing that says wall, it will start sliding down it. But if it's false, then it will be then you won't be wall sliding on anything. But if it is true, then it will apply force and physics, which is my RB2D, which is my rigid body, and my velocity, and so the get button, so the way to wall slide, you'll be pressing the space button. This is my fixed update, which is move the player, so moving it left and right again, and limiting the speed in the player so it doesn't go too far or jumps too high. This restarts the level when the player dies, so whenever it hits a spike and dies, or whenever it gets into the death zone and dies. This is damage done by spikes, as well as the boss and the enemies. So when the player enters a collider for the gem, it will play the audio manager gem. It will destroy the object, and then it will add it +1 to your game master. Whenever you hit a spike or boss or the enemy, it will knock back your character. So this is my player attack, which I use for mainly my my boss fight. So this is a timer, so you cannot spam, or sets the floats where you cannot spam the attack. You have my references, my transform, my layer mask, my float, and my integer. So if there's no restraints, so basically if there's no restraints with time, then you can attack, which is, and then this gets the button, which is backspace. This will stop, so this timer will stop the player from attacking for a minute, and then you can continue attacking. This also creates a gizmo in my inspector, so I can adjust the range where the player can attack. So it's a circle collider, and in it, if the enemy is not in it, I mean boss is not in it, then you cannot hit the boss. It also shows as blue, and it draws my sphere depending on my attack position, my range, and so forth. And then this is my sound, which is my audio. It plays my audio clips. This is how far the volume can go up. This is my range. I do have a float volume as well, which is how far the pitch can go up. It creates a loop, which allows me to loop noises or sounds, and then it hides the audio source in inspector. So if I apply a noise to like the player, it will not show that when it's in play or in the inspector scene. So these are my spikes, which is basically the same as my enemy damage. It finds the player tag, and then when the player interacts with it, it will damage the player. This is my dash behavior, which it goes into my boss. So these declare the floats. My references was a transform and the speed. So this finds the player position, so the dragon will go towards the player position. This is the timer and the amount of time it will go. And also it has a randomizer, which we'll get into. Well, no, it's right here. I do have a randomizer, so it will go in between my fire animator or my dash. But if it is not in my dash behavior, it'll go into my fire animation. This is my death zone animation, which is basically saying when the player hits it, it will kill the player and it will reload the scene which the player came from. This is my fire behavior, which is like my dash behavior. It has a timer on it. It can only go for a certain amount of time, and when that timer runs out, it will go It'll randomly pick between dash or fire, and if it is in dash, then it will play dash. If it is in fire, then it will play fire. This is my intro behavior, which sets up my randomizer for both scripts. It shows the random range, which is between 0 and 2, which is my 2 animations, which is my fire or my dash, so it will go in between with all stages 1 and 2. And then this is my private integer I have. And then this is my main menu script. So when you hit the button play, it will load the first level of the game. Public void play game, which loads the first scene when you hit play. This will quit the game when you hit quit. I also have a debug so I can see it while I'm in Inspector, since I haven't had it built yet. And thank you for listening.